I remember my sister randomly getting me Fallout 3 on Christmas. And what started off as, sure, cool, I'll play it, turned into one of my favorite memories of both of us at 3 in the morning, anxiously watching the TV while I aimed my sniper at a camp filled with super mutants, thinking I was being sneaky, and then a super mutant jump scaring us as he swung the weapon at me through the scope. Fallout 3 takes freedom from the first 2 games and brings it to the 3rd dimension, a level of freedom that I hadn't experienced in video games yet. Sure, Grand Theft Auto lets you free roam, Saints Row has a bunch of mini games, but the Fallout games opened up and let you do what you want and experience what was out there in the order that you wanted to experience them in. Fallout 3 starts us off as a baby in the most awkward sounding opening ever.
It's a boy. A boy. We've got a son, Captain. A beautiful, healthy baby boy.
You like that? Huh? You like that? Wah! You just tune this out, don't you? Wah! Well, tune this out! Wah!
The first time we interact with characters is during a 10-year-old birthday, and it highlights just how awkward the conversations and mechanics in this game are, but in a charming and entertaining way.
You're gonna be sorry, you little smart mouth.
Daddy, I
Should've
told you
just
not to
given
act
me the
all
speech.
official. I know you were joking, but I'm not sure anyone else did.
Butch, what do you think you're doing? Leave him
I
alone.
always enjoy my little speeches. Besides, that friend
You
of
all
yours
right,
could
son?
use a reminder that
He didn't
life
hurt
is
you,
not
did he?
all.
All right,
what do you think we
Butch.
should call our
Supposed to
game?
be a party,
Hey,
you
how
know?
about the
Hey,
vocal?
Officer
Get it?
Gump.
You should try it sometime, Daddy.
What did he tell you?
Might
It was
like
my
it.
fault?
Characters talk over each other, interrupt each other, in this case straight up ignore each other.
How are you enjoying the party, Mrs. Palmer? I help with the decorations, you know.
Eventually we're adults, and after a bit more customization, things go bad. Amada, our childhood friend, wakes us up one day telling us that our dad has gone missing from the vault and no one can leave the vault, and that her dad, the overseer, is looking for us, and it's time we escape as all hell breaks loose in the vault. We get the choice throughout this intro to save certain characters or let them die or kill them. Butch, who is our childhood bully, asks us to save his mom, but who is being killed by rad roaches, who are these giant cockroaches. And you get a gun and you have the chance to kill the overseer, but that'll make Amada hate you. I chose to save Butch's mom and let the overseer live, which leads to Amada wishing me the best as I run out of the vault while the guards shoot at me. My character walks through the door and the sun's bright light blinds me before revealing a destroyed, lonely, empty, shattered world. And at this point, we kind of have an idea of where we're meant to go, but the game isn't going to be like, okay, hurry up and go there. Whatever you see, you're allowed to just walk over there and explore it. And the original games let you do this, but in a more old school way. This time, we literally gotta walk there. And if there just happens to be something dangerous out there or a character who needs help, then it's up to us to fight, to help, to just keep exploring. First thing I do is I make my way to Megaton, a small town that got built around a nuke that never went off. Sure, why not? We ask around about our dad and we get told that he was heading towards a local radio station. But before we go, there's this fancy man in the corner who wants us to activate the nuke in the middle of the megaton and destroy it because he hates how ugly the town is. And I make the choice to Just kidding, I couldn't do it. I like Megaton a lot, so I report him to the local sheriff, and it leads to the fancy man's death. I found this random supermarket and decided to explore it and kill everyone inside, and while walking down the street, this random kid goes running by, and I'm like, you good? And he tells me to find him back at his hometown because it got overrun. I try to cross this bridge, but I try to cross the bridge again, but then I get... Eventually, we find the Brotherhood of Steel fighting off super mutants, and after fighting alongside them, we reach the radio station where a giant mutant behemoth storms through and fucks up this poor guy over and over again. I felt so bad for him, and I just kept watching because it was funny. We head into the radio station where 3Dog, the host of one of the remaining radio stations, is waiting with valuable information. And normally if you want information from him, then he's like, okay, go fix my radio antenna and I'll give you what you want. But since I raised my speech so much at this point, I was able to just completely skip this entire mission, and he just told me where to go next, which was very confusing in the moment, but very cool. Before heading to the next destination though, I decided to check out this kid's hometown, and it's filled with giant fire ants that breathe fire and set me on fire because it's just so much fire. And I run around killing ants for a long time, and then I head into the subway. I got very, very lost for a very, very long time. I got frustrated. I got a headache. I stopped playing for the night.
The next day.
The search for our dad continued, and we reached Rivet City, a city placed entirely on a giant ship, and I hate this city. I think the layout is stupid and confusing and overly complicated and uninteresting. We learned from Dr. Lee that our dad ran off to Vault 112 for some reason. I don't know. The story kind of sucks for this game, but I do like Vault 112, where we get into this sleeping chamber thing, and we get transported to this old-timey level where everyone's being kept hostage and forced to live happy lives. Oh, the misery. We make this kid cry by telling him his parents are going to abandon him.
I won't wet the bed again.
I try to get these two to break up, but I couldn't figure out how to do it, but it's okay because this senile old lady tells me that there's a way out. So I go to this abandoned house and I play this weird jingle jangle, and then the Chinese invade and kill everyone, and we escape and meet up with our dad, and he immediately tells us that he missed us, but then he leaves again to continue his mission. And by the way, the dad's mission is called Project Purity, and it's used to use this machine or device. I think it's called a GEC, and it's meant to purify the water and slowly rebuild society. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it is. I don't know. The story kind of sucks and didn't have me that interested, but someone's gonna comment, someone's gonna correct me. If I'm wrong at any point, please feel free to leave a comment. At this point, I went back to finish the giant ant mission, and I did. And look at this big ass ant queen. I didn't kill her because Queen was slain. I do a couple more side missions to level up, get better equipment. Eventually we go to with our dad and his team of scientists to do something relating to the water purification, but the Enclave show up, and the Enclave are evil. There are videos explaining them more in depth, but all I'm gonna say is that they are evil, they are selfish, and that they are evil, but they also have really cool armor. Our dad kills himself and takes some of the Enclave with him. Some more boring stuff happens, blah blah, clean water, blah blah, men in black, blah blah, science. Eventually we help this super mutant who is super intelligent. His name is Fox, and he is my boyfriend, and he comes with us to take down the Enclave after they kidnap us, and their leader gives us an offer to team up, but since my speech is so high, I'm able to just really easily convince him to just self-destruct. But the Enclave is still a threat for some reason, and we use this giant robot to fight off the Enclave, and it's this big epic war, and it's all cool, except I kind of just sit behind the robot most of the time, because anytime I try to do anything, I die almost immediately. We get into the room to activate Project Purity and start cleaning the water, but the room is all but the room is all poisonous and radioactive, and going in there will kill us. Now, the game's original ending is that your character has to go inside and sacrifice himself to clean the water, but since we got the game with a year edition, we get the alternate ending where we send Fox in instead, since radioactivity cannot kill him, and we knock out during an explosion, and we wake up 2 weeks later with some of our teammates still unconscious, but the future looks bright. And that is Fallout 3. Let's get my main big issue with this game out of the way. I think the main story sucks. It's presented in a very limited, linear way, with the options only leading to one of two endings if you don't have the DLC. I think there's way too much of this. And the dad is not interesting at all. He is completely unlikable all the way through to his death. The Enclave are cool enough, but I found myself enjoying the side quests way more than the main quest. I think it drags on. Rivet City again sucks, and at a certain point I felt like I was just going back and forth from the same locations from one to another, just forcing myself to keep playing because, well, I had to finish the main quest. The final battle, quote unquote, is very cool, but these games' controls don't lend themselves to the action that's provided, so you're better off just staying behind and letting the NPCs kill each other. There are moments that I like throughout the game. When I go into Vault 112, like I said, it's a memorable highlight. The mutant behemoth fight is entertaining, taking down enemies using VATS is super satisfying. Also, VATS is a new feature to this game where you click a button and everything stops and it highlights a body part and it gives you a percentage, which is how much of a chance you have to hit that body part, and sometimes it'll be a critical hit. This VAT system right here 200% saves the game, mainly because the controls have aged horribly, but that's just a Bethesda thing in general. Their controls are rough, and this game is old, and the shooting is some of the wonkiest shooting ever. There's no cover system, there's no sprint, the crouch is barely a crouch, the aiming is borderline unusable without the VAT system. Like I said, VAT saves this game and absolutely makes the gameplay the fun, immersive, engaging gameplay that it is, along with the exploration. I love the world of Fallout 3. It feels desolate and lonely, and at times it's scary. There's this elementary school with bodies hanging down from the ceilings and blood covering the walls and body parts scattered everywhere. This building that's extremely dark and is filled with loud, fast ghouls. At one point I came across this train yard and it was nighttime and it was dark and there were all these raiders and I was low on health items, but I managed to shoot my way through it, barely surviving. And at the end I saw this big ass locked up gate and I opened it thinking there would be something worth exploring, and I saw this in the dark. When you walk out of that vault and you see this wide open world around you, there's no knowing what's out there, and the fact that there are some genuinely messed up and scary places and creatures out there is such a tantalizingly addicting treat to hold in front of you, and it's the game's strongest asset. The vibe, the end of the world aesthetic, the sound of the wasteland is all so top notch, and I had such a blast for almost all of my playthrough, except for the occasional rough main story moments, but I can ignore them if it means the world around the story is so good. That's not where it ends for Fallout 3. Bethesda released 5 DLCs for it, and after finishing the main story, I accidentally started one of the DLCs, so with no further introduction, I present to you Broken Steel takes place 2 weeks after the main game. You wake up and the Brotherhood is like, yo, we took out the Enclave, but not really because they're still out there and we gotta take out what's left of them. And this DLC is alright. Character-wise and story-wise, it's as forgettable as the main game, but it is very chaotic. It consists of tight shootouts in small hallways, and while for the longest I thought this game's controls don't translate to that kind of gameplay, once I was low on healing items and I kept dying, I found myself finding ways to strategically take down groups of enemies using stealth boys which turn you invisible, grenades and missiles, and I ended up having a really fun time. But the frame rate was struggling and there would be random freezes and bugs on the daily depending on how much was happening on screen. And so much was happening on screen, like this. Eventually, it got to the point where the game had to load in so much data that the loading screens for some reason became extremely long. See, this is a normal Fallout loading screen. It's really not that bad considering all things. It was never distracting or did it ever detract from the experience. This was the loading screen halfway through the Broken Steel DLC. In fact, while we wait for the game to load, let me talk about something I didn't talk about in the main game, the side quests. The side quests are some of my favorite parts of Fallout. I think we can all agree Fallout 3 has no shortage. Those is a great one that I've covered already, where you find the town covered in fire ants and you have the chance to take down the Ant Queen and keep her alive, and in return you get a boost in your abilities. Trouble on the home front, where you go back to Vault 101 and find it struggling to go on since your escape, and you need to either put things back together or mess things up even further. It's interesting. Oasis is another banger that completely changes the scenery and involves this man who is stuck as this half tree creature and he wants to die, and you can kill him, sure, or you can accelerate his growth to save the wasteland but keep him suffering forever, and it opens up so many moral questions. And my personal favorite, Andale, a small town that seems loving and sweet, but there's this grandpa who's like, you gotta get out while you can, and eventually you find this shed and inside are cut up body parts being cooked and turned into food, and you can either act like everything is cool or fight your way out and kill everyone on the way out. This side quest is downright scary, wild, and like I said, my personal favorite in the game. So yeah, those are some of my personal favorite side quests in Fallout 3, and it doesn't even scratch the surface of the amount of incredible side quests, and we're still waiting for Broken Steel to load. So yeah. So how's your day going? Oh, there it is. Do you see what I mean? Do you see what I mean? What is with this broken ass game? The next DLC I played through was Mothership Zeta. I do not like this DLC. Okay, I do kind of like it. I think there are aspects to it that are cool, but overall, I would never want to play through it again. The DLC starts when you walk up to this alien spaceship and get abducted, and then you wake up in the ship and the aliens are all laughing at your dick size, even though it's perfectly normal to be a late bloomer, and some people even prefer when they're smaller because the bigger ones hurt, so there's nothing wrong with the game froze right here, but weirdly enough, I could still pause and unpause my game, and like I said, the game froze, except for this alien back here who was still moving around while Thing 1 and Thing 2 were just stuck in time. I restart my game and get abducted again, and this time it all works out. Mothership Zeta takes place entirely on this spaceship as you team up with a group of characters to try to escape. There's Soma, a girl who I don't remember her backstory. This little girl who I think her name was Susie, and she has dead parents. That's all I know. There's this guy who was alive before the nuclear war and has been frozen since then, so all this news about the world ending in nuclear warfare has him shaking in his boots. This cowboy looking guy that I was attracted to, don't tell Fox, and this samurai who is gonna tell you all about himself. There's also Jimmy the astronaut. He's sleeping. I personally like the group of characters we meet. I liked watching them interact with each other and share their little experiences, even if it is the bare minimum. But together we shoot our way through long hallways after long hallways after long hallways after long hallways after long hallways. This DLC is very repetitive and boring. Now there are moments I like. You can ask characters to come with you, and I asked a cowboy guy to come with me at one point, and I used this spaceship to kill a bunch of enemies while he had my back, and even made comments about the situation around us, and then he got vaporized. It kind of felt cinematic. After this, the remaining members head to the cockpit and face off against the leadership, and this part is pretty cool. It feels epic, and you got aliens breaking in and the characters shooting them while trying to manage the boss fight in front of them, and the samurai is running around with a sword. At the end of the DLC, the characters that we saved decide that being in space is way better than being on Earth and become a space team while we head back to Earth and reunite with Fox and Dogmeat, who is so happy to see us he has melted into the ground. Overall, the DLC is just fine. I like these freaky looking abominations, and the weapons you get are some of my favorites so far, but the shooting is so clunky and wonky, and in a game that's biggest strength is the open world and the exploration, having another hallway shooter DLC started feeling kind of disheartening. Point Lookout is my single favorite Fallout experience so far. I think I like Point Lookout more than I like the main Fallout 3 game. So Point Lookout starts when we get to this boat, and we're greeted by this lady who's like, yo, are you going to Point Lookout? My daughter, her name is Nadine, she went there. Can you find her, please? I agree and try to buy a ticket for the boat, but no matter where I go, I can't find the captain. I check the first floor, I check high, I check low, and that's where I find him, low, under the pier in the water for some reason. We make our way to Point Lookout, and it's dark, it's eerie, it's foggy. It's an entire new map with new areas to explore and creatures to face off against. I was expecting another DLC filled with hallway shootouts, but no, Point Lookout gives so much content. When we get to Point Lookout, I get told about a mansion that might be worth checking out. I head to the mansion and run into these cuties. I love these guys. They're so freaky looking and ugly, and they make weird noises and they feel like something out of Wrong Turn.
I knew I heard something!
I meet Desmond inside the mansion and his two dogs, and then he asks me to help fight off these members of a tribe who are assaulting his mansion and trying to kill him. I love this entire mission. It's intense and fast paced, and yes, it takes place indoors and in hallways, but you're given so many types of weapons to fight them off with. You can place down mines in front of these doors so it kills them as they run in. Also, Desmond is a piece of shit. I hate him, and he's also one of my favorite characters in the series so far. He's such an asshole, but he pulls it off in such a charismatic way. I'm always being insulted by him, but I can't help but be like,
The answer is training, you ignorant fuck! I've got 100 years of experience on you, and don't you forget it.
Desmond asks me to infiltrate the tribe that attacked him and become one of them, find out what's going on the innards. So I head towards where the tribe is staying, but I find this little satanic ritual site surrounded by dolls and creepy statues, and an entrance to a basement, so of course I go inside. And there's this wall covering up a tunnel, and I try to blow it up, but it doesn't work, so I decide to leave and come back later. And as soon as I leave, this big ass scary looking hillbilly is running towards me, and this made me jump. I know it doesn't seem that bad, but when the controller is in your hands and you got this big ass Goonies looking motherfucker running towards you, it makes the titties bounce, trust me. I get to the tribe's hideout, but they ask me to prove myself by going to take a plant from a wild pingu plant. I don't really know what it is, but I go into the cave where the plant is and I fight off these mire lurks and swamp lurks, and I'm just gonna say it. Does anyone else find swamp lurks kinda hot? Like, look at their abs and muscles and thighs. Hold on, I need to Google if anyone else thinks this. Tell me I'm not the only one that finds lake lurks kind of cute, which is what they're called in New Vegas. You're the only one. No. Nah, I'd let them hit. They alright. They fugly. Shut the fuck up. It looks like when you see a 12-year-old kid doing a Fortnite emote in public. So we get to the plant and get knocked out, and when we wake up, my character is experiencing some intense hallucinations that get pretty dark. I think this whole section is really freaky, and you find these bobbleheads with messed up messages. Isn't it funny how everything you get close to ends up leaving? If my kid looked like that, I'd abandon it too. You're gay? Oh my. I get back to the tribe hideout where they let me join, and I find them spazzing the fuck out, but I also find Nadine, and I'm like, yo, mama misses you, homegirl, and she came to join the tribe, but after seeing they're just a bunch of weirdos, she's pretty down to leave. But first she tells us that we're lucky our our brain still works. And I'm like, what you talking about, woman? And she tells me that when I passed out and was hallucinating, someone cut my head open and took out a piece of my brain. And they do that to all the tribe members, which is why they're all goofed up in the head. Nadine tells me that she's gonna do some investigating as to who and why they're taking out chunks of our brains, and tells me to meet her by the boat in 2 days. 2 days go by and I meet Nadine, who tells me that she found out the captain of the boat who brought me to the island was the one who was cutting people's brains out, and I go to confront him. We shoot each other, I blow his head up, I take a look at all these jars with all the brain chunks before finding this jar that gives me the message. You feel a terrible sense of loss as you look at the familiar lumps of gray matter. It's so messed up and weird and dark, and I love it so much. I check back in with Desmond, who's like, cool, go find out more, and I go to this cave where the leader of the tribe, Jackson, is doing this while talking to this holograph of a brain. The brain asks me to destroy Desmond. Turns out Desmond and this brain are rivals and hate each other, and this brain sent the tribe to kill Desmond and destroy the mansion. I report back to Desmond, and he explains that the brain is the last member of the Calvert family, and that Desmond's family and Calvert's family have been rivals for hundreds on hundreds of years, long before the bombs dropped. I make my way over to this fair to put the device on the bottom of the Ferris wheel and block off Calvert's holographic brain messages so that he can't contact the tribe anymore, and when I do that, I get ambushed, but I escape because alien ray gun, bitch. I make my way back to the mansion to report to Desmond, but then I find a panic room where Desmond is angry because his dogs died in the explosion, and together we make our way to the local lighthouse because that's where Calvert is hiding. We fight our way through a bunch of robots and get the choice to kill Desmond or Calvert. I choose to kill Calvert because bro is a fucking brain, and Desmond is like, good job, now go away, I never have to see your ugly ass again. And then I kill Desmond too because why not? I love him as a character, and ending his story with both him and his rival dying, I mean, it just felt right. On the way back to the boat, I stumble upon this old man who wants me to find a book and return it to him. And then when I leave his home, this lady walks up to me and is like, he wants to bring back the devil. Don't give him the book. When you find it, give it to me instead. I go back to the ritual spot from earlier, and this time the wall is taken down so I can go into the tunnel, and it's dark and it's creepy. So I did plan on doing the right thing and giving the book to the girl so it could be destroyed, but the old guy offered me money, so he wins. I give him the book and he kicks me out of his house, but I sneak and follow him down to the basement where he's worshipping a dead body. Point Lookout has set the standard so high for the remaining DLCs, that atmosphere, the almost paranormal feeling, the creepy new enemies, the way the burnt forest look in the dark with the fog and the Goonies enemies lurking around every corner. I think the characters are all great, and the story, while yes, it is anticlimactic by the end, the journey itself is a fun time. It felt like I was playing an indie horror game, and I can't recommend Fallout 3 enough just for this DLC. And I'm hoping this means the remaining DLCs are also going to be stepping it up. So after each DLC, I usually have to find Fox and Dogmeat and reunite with them so they can follow me and protect me. This time around, I forgot to do that, and on my way to the next DLC, this happened. Operation Anchorage is a tough cookie. On one hand, it's another hallway shooter that drags on for almost 3 hours, which in my opinion is way too long. On the other hand, there are segments in this DLC that I really like. The outdoor moments, the snowy mountains, even the indoor spaces that this time come with cover. Even if the game's controls suck at first-person shooter style gameplay, they try their hardest to make it work here. Operation Anchorage starts off super awkwardly as you come across the outcast, and they tell us, you either help us or get out of the way. So naturally I help them and do everything myself until I find some cool armor for myself. Just look at how stylish I am. Woo! I go down this elevator and meet these two characters who are like, oh, so you're the backup, huh? Follow me and I'll take you to our leader. But after following him for a long time, he got stuck on this wall, and then he forgot he was taking me to their leader.
Who the hell are you? And what do you think you're doing?
Told me to follow you! Turns out the outcasts are trying to open this door, but the only way to open it is to complete a VR simulation of a war that happened back in 2006 in Alaska between Chinese communists and the American army because they were fighting for the last of the world's oil. Honestly, the story is the most forgettable yet. When you're in the VR world, you can't pick up any loot aside from a few DLC exclusive collectibles. You lose all your real world gear, which makes sense because you're in a simulation, but it makes everything feel pointless. I don't care about any of these characters, and aside from the outdoor parts looking good and even feeling kind of good to play, the rest of the DLC just feels like more Broken Steel, more Mothership Zeta. At the end of the DLC, we finish the VR simulation and open the door for the outcast, and then they all fight and kill each other anyway, so it all feels pointless. Operation Anchorage isn't the worst DLC by any means. If I'm being honest, Mothership Zeta kinda still has that last place vibe, but this definitely felt like a step back, especially after Point Lookout. But it's okay because we've got one more DLC and I'm hoping this game ends things with a bang. The Pit is not as good as Point Lookout. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. But it is absolutely my second favorite DLC so far, and I think it was the perfect one to end Fallout 3 with. The journey starts as I make my way to this top corner of the map that I hadn't been to yet, and lo and behold, I get ambushed by a bunch of Enclave soldiers and Deathclaws, but thanks to my alien gun, I'm able to take them all down with no issue. Damn, I love this gun so much, I even gave it a little spanking. Ooh, good girl. I run into this dude, Werner, and that's where he tells me about the Pit. A place where huge groups of slaves are being tortured and forced to work for these slavers, and there's a disease going around that's killing them and turning them into a mysterious creature known as Trogs, and the slavers have the cure but they refuse to give it to the slaves. He tells me to put on a slave outfit so that I can go inside the pit undercover as a slave, and I start to question my life decisions as I find myself sexually attracted to yet another video game character. After this, Werner and I make our way into the pit where I turn myself in as a slave and get put to work. I meet up with Medea, who tells me that I need to prove myself by going to the dangerous part of the pit to find 10 steel ingots while avoiding the Trogs. I love these enemies. The first time we see them is through this gate where this NPC is talking to who is presumably his brother, but that person has turned into a Trog due to the disease that's been spreading throughout the pit. He ends up chasing his brother around before I open the gate he's trapped behind and kill the Trog version of his brother. He then stands over him crying and begging for his brother to come back. The story, it's great. It's nothing complicated, it's nothing epic, it's simple. It's just a look at a dark, messed up underworld hidden behind the end of the world, and I love it. I love the pit's dark, foggy, dirty look, the tall buildings where the slavers live in comfort, and the dark, red, eerie, filthy corners where the Trogs live. The pit feels lived in with tons of unique looking slaves and slavers walking around and commenting on the situation they're in. It feels absolutely miserable in the best way, and I had so much fun exploring every inch of it. After collecting 10 steel ingots, Asher, the leader of the pit slavers, sends us to fight for our freedom in the Hole, a 3-round combat arena, and when we win our freedom. But this is all going according to plan, as now we can visit Asher one-on-one as he tells us about the cure, and bam, it turns out the cure is his daughter. We talk to Asher's wife, Sandra, and she explains that they're researching the baby's blood to see what's up with the cure, and we kidnap the baby, kill the mom, and shoot our way out in one of the most epic feeling shootouts in the entire game. And I know I could have done this DLC at any time, but waiting until the very end of my Fallout 3 experience to play through this was the perfect choice because every single slaver comes after me, and I'm getting shot from every single corner and leaving a trail of blood and body parts behind me, and then I turn in the baby to Werner, who's going to extract the cure from the baby's blood, and then my game crashes. So I load it up, I fight through the slavers again. No worries, I'm not even mad, this whole part is fun. I turn in the baby again, and my game crashes again. One more time, okay. Fight through the slavers, turn in the baby, crash. So turns out, for some reason, I just can't get past this part. Once the baby leaves my inventory, the game is like, no, sorry, you need the baby to keep playing. So I load up an earlier save before I kidnap the baby, and I do the only other logical option. I eat the baby. Eating the baby is a mod you can install, but we're going to pretend this is how it really ends. When I got my brain cut out during Point Lookout, combined with the alien trauma, combined with watching my dad die, combined with spending time in VR with a broken brain, it just led to a fractured mentality where I end up eating a baby. The end.